Mountain high, valley low, I'll sing out, remind my soul that I'm yours. I am forever yours. Oh, I'm yours forever. And if my heart is overwhelmed and I cannot hear your voice, I'll hold on to what is true, though I cannot see. Though the storms of life they come and the road ahead gets steep, I will lift these hands in faith, I will believe. And I remind myself of all that you've done and the life I have because of your Son. Love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I'm yours, I am forever yours. Mountain high, valley low, I'll sing out, remind my soul that I'm yours, I am forever yours. When my heart is filled with hope, every promise comes my way. When I feel your hands of grace rest upon me, I'm staying desperate for you, God, staying humble at your feet. And I will lift these hands in praise, and I will believe. 'Cause I remind myself of all that you've done and the life I have because of your Son. I remind myself, oh, I remind myself of all that you've done. And the life I have because of your
Good evening, guys. I'm super glad that y'all were able to join us again for our service online. I hope you've had a really good week. I know that me and Bliss have been thinking about you guys a lot, and we're really excited to finally get together and just party, honestly. I think just a full night of worship and fun is in store for sure. By the way, if you're having fun during this time in any way, we want to see it and know about it. So either message the Hill Instagram with your videos or send it to us. Send it to me, Brooklyn, Kaufman, Bliss, or even just send it to share it with your friends just in general. Put it on your story. We just want to see what kind of fun you guys are having. We want to be connected with y'all as much as we can. So for those of you who may be new to watching, this is my wife Bliss. She's a youth pastor here as well at the Hill, and she's joining us for the third part of our series called The Friendly God. As you guys have know that have watched the last couple weeks, we've been doing this series called The Friendly God, and it's been, each week has had a different leader sit down with me, and we've gone over three questions, or two questions. What has God shown you personally about his testimony? And what are two things that God is passionate about that you've experienced in your walk with him? And so we've been diving into that, and the reason we've called it The Friendly God is simply just to encourage you guys that God not only calls you his friend, but he's actually approachable. He's actually like in this with you. It's not just this term that he uses because it's a nice thing to say. He actually is in the day-to-day with you, and he's actually, you actually have a story with God. And so what we've heard from Levi last week and Joseph the week before is just a glimpse into their story and journey with God. And this week, we get to have a little glimpse into Bliss's story. And I'm really stoked for you guys here. I'm a little biased because she is my wife, but I also am biased because I know her story the most out of anyone that I had on here so far. And you guys are in for a treat. So Bliss, thanks for being here with me. It's cool we get to do it in our house. You guys see I have a blanket on because I like to be comfy. Bliss laughs at me because I wear a blanket even if it's super hot in the house. But it's because I like to be comfy. I choose, but for some people it isn't comfy because it makes you sweaty, and that's not comfy, but you know. So how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Do you have anything you want to say to the students?
No.
Okay.
Hi.
Well, that's it, guys. I'll see you guys next week. I'm playing. So let's pray first, and then we'll get going. Jesus, you're really good, and you show me how good you are by letting me be Bliss's husband, and by letting me be the youth pastor of the Hill. God, I'm not just saying that because it's sentimental and sweet. God, I really mean it. Like, you've been so good to me, and so good to us as a couple, and just thank you so much for your goodness. Thank you for what you're going to show us of your goodness as me and Bliss talk tonight about who you are. In Jesus' name, amen.
It's actually like noon.
Right. And even though we say tonight, technically, even if it was in the evening, it's still daylight. So, but anyway, it's gonna be really good. Bliss, what are some things that you've been up to during quarantine? By the way, I don't know why she's so far from me. We don't have social distance because we're married. So, cool thing about being married is you don't have social distance when other people do. So anyway, what are some things you've been up to during quarantine, just real quick?
Social distancing.
What are some other things? What are some other things? My voice started
Well, my life didn't really change a whole lot, except I don't get to go to church or non-essential hanging out or shopping or whatever. But I've been taking care of kids. I've cleaned. We had a birthday party for August, which was mostly decorations. We had a silly string war.
So Finley was terrified.
Yeah, she really hated it. It was really bad, but it's okay. He had a good time. There's about a 4-foot dinosaur behind you up on the wall. But anyway, yeah, other than that, not a whole lot of anything. I had a birthday as well, and that's it.
It's been pretty fun. Her birthday was a party. It was like, even though it was just her and I pretty much, it was still a lot of fun.
There's a lot of candy. There's a lot of candy involved.
Yes.
Lots of candy.
Bliss
Still
likes
still
candy.
have some of the candy.
I helped her eat it.
Yes.
Especially the almond joys. So Bliss, we've been doing this series called The Friendly God the last couple weeks, and this will be our last week doing it. So you get the honor of sharing with us part of your journey. What in your journey with the Lord, and in your experiences of your alone time with Him and stuff, what is something of His testimony, that you've gotten to know? If I were to ask you about some of your friends' testimonies, you'd be able to share with me parts of their testimonies. Like for instance, Brooke and Millie are your friends. Faith, you'd be able to tell me part of their testimony because you spent time with them and they've opened up to you. Well, God, you spent time with God. God spent time with you. He's opened up to you. What have you experienced God to tell you about His testimony?
Probably the biggest thing that I experienced with His testimony was friendship. So companionship. A lot of the things that I experienced was abandonment. Not really parents-wise. Both of my parents, I have both my parents. They're both together, whatever. But just internal relationship processes, friendships, really bad church situations, a lot of relational hurt. And He was that companion or that friend, the friend that sticks closer than the brother, and that part of Him, that Jesus part of Him, that came and was in our suffering, or I guess I'd go in His suffering, but created a community around Him, of the close-knit people, and then there's the outer circle that was this 70 that were always following Jesus, and then there's the 12 that He kept close to His heart, and we're really with Him through almost everything, and Him just being a friend to people and showing people love. A lot of people that had never experienced love in that way, like the prostitute or the tax collector, whatever, the lepers, stuff like that. And so I really got to, in my personal life, experience the friendship of God, and no matter what happened, or no matter who said something mean about me, or who, tried to destroy the family's reputation, or who hurt who, He was always there, and He was never going to leave. And not only was He always there as a phone call away, just call me and I'm there, best friend, but just all I did was think about Him, and I was like, oh yeah, He's right here. And as I got close to Him, He would come in almost like He would call me. He'd be like, hey, I'm right here. And so probably His constant companionship is the biggest part of the testimony of Jesus that I've experienced. And prophecy is a testimony of Jesus, and I experienced a lot of Him through prophecy, through prophesying to or over people, and then the reciprocation of getting prophecies by people. And it was it's like a confirmation that He sees you, and that He knows you, and that He's there, and that He's powerful, because He tells somebody else something about you that they never knew, or they couldn't have known, and you didn't tell them. And then they tell about you, and they're like, hey, Jesus told me you're this way. And them just be like, wow, Jesus does know me. He is my friend. He's talking about me with other people. And they're now telling me what He's experienced of me. Not only am I telling them what I've experienced of Him. So it was like a friendship back and forth. And then being able to show people that they could have that too. And that, hey, He sees you as a friend, because guess what He told me about you.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest.
That's really cool. That's how me and Bliss officially began our friendship, was Jesus telling her something about me. So I can totally testify that Bliss has experienced that kind of friendship from the Lord with other people. When I think about what you're saying, it reminds me of His faithfulness, which is a part of His testimony that I've experienced. And it reminds me of a song that you guys should all look up on YouTube. It's by an artist named Ryan Kondo. And it's a song, I forget the name of the song, but in the song it says, I've got a song to sing, a song of your faithfulness. And that's so true. Throughout my whole life, I can look back at throughout all the years of my life, all the way back to the first that I can remember, which is like 3. And it's like, you know, just memories. But if you really look back and allow God to show you, you begin to see that he was there all along. And he was faithfully pursuing you, but also faithfully like in the midst of your circumstances, like bringing reconciliation, bringing life, and establishing his rule and reign as who he is, you know. And so I think of his testimony. I think of what you said is beautiful, and I think it's really cool that you've experienced that with him. For me, it's been his faithfulness, and I think what's cool about us sharing what we've experienced about his testimony is even though we are only in our 20s, God's been doing those 2 things for long before that. Like, think of friendship of God. The first friend of God talked about in the Bible isn't actually Adam, which I'm not saying they didn't have friendship, but Abraham is actually the first friend of God listed. And then you have, right after Adam and Eve sinned, God declaring a promise of a Savior to come. And so you see his faithfulness begin to play out from that point onward, of him being faithful to his promise, faithful to his name, and then faithful to his friends. So that's really cool. So just like the last couple weeks, I encourage you guys, I forgot to say it earlier, but I encourage you all to get alone with the Lord and ask him these questions that we're going over. You may be thinking, dude, I've done that the last 2 weeks. Do it again. Because you can never do this too much. You can never know the Lord's testimony enough, and you can never know what he's passionate about enough. So speaking of what he's passionate about, what are 2 things that you've experienced in your walk with the Lord that God is passionate about? Just go ahead and name one.
Probably communion. So not like, you know, communion.
Bread and crackers.
Yeah, bread and crackers. He's really into that kind of stuff. Bread and crackers and juice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant crackers and juice. My bad. Bread and bread.
Bread and crackers. Yeah, that's how you die. Anyway, and you need something to drink.
Yeah.
Anyway, communion as in relation and your connection with him. That's probably something that I've found to be not only a really important part of what he wants to have with his children, but what he wants to have above and beyond literally anything else. All he wants is companionship with us, to be included in our lives, and he includes us in his life. And so that's, I would say, is Jesus, in my experience, is Jesus' number 1 passion. Or, you know, God's number 1 passion is to encounter us and us to encounter him, and not just encounter, because that kind of makes it sound like it's like a moment. Oh, we had an encounter. But just a steady, long relationship of encounters and experiences and conversations, and that's all he wants, is to really be able to have us and us have him. Yeah. More than anything.
That's really good. It makes me think of if you just think on the word communion for a little bit. I think of 2 words, and it's the word common and the word union. You know, communion. It's like, so when I think, and this may not even be the definition of the word, but it's just something that's come to my mind, is I think about what is the common union that we as people have and that God has, and I think of Jesus. You know, Jesus is both God and man. And so whenever I think of communion between God and man, I think of Jesus. And so I think that's so good. It's just like, you know, I know Bliss enough to know we're not saying that you won't have encounters or whatever, but which I believe what you're trying to say is you experience God's passionate about the ongoing. Yes, encounters happen, but those are just more reflections of what's always going on. Yeah. One day, Bliss was about to preach or teach on worship at a prayer meeting that we used to go to in Mansfield, and she sent me her notes, and one of the things in her notes she said, and speaking of worship, she said worship is an outward expression of an inward encounter, and that's always stuck with me. And that's what I think of what you're saying is our encounters that we experience on the outside are just an outward expression of this communion. That's really cool. I like that. So Bliss should preach on a communion soon. That's what I think. So, well, for me, something that I've experienced that God's really passionate about is those in need. Like I'm thinking like, and honestly, it makes me want to cry right now thinking about it. But it's like God is a God that loves to reach out to the needy. You know, like all throughout the Bible, the poor are highlighted as ones that we need to give to, that we need to care for. In fact, the Bible says in James, the book of James, that pure religion to God is caring for the orphan and the widow. And I think of like, you know, in that time, the widow and the orphan, it's not like now where, you know, a widow can be this rich millionaire. I'm not saying it didn't happen then, but oftentimes they were the lower class of people. They were the needy ones, the lowest, yeah. And especially with how women were in society back then. And so God, what I see throughout the whole Bible, which by the way, I encourage you to read the Bible, is one full story. I challenge you to do that. It's great. You'll discover a lot about God. Is his love and his heart to reach the needy. So that is something that I've experienced that God's passionate about. God is passionate about those that are needy, that those are in need. He actually encourages us to be needy. Not in a way of using him.
God likes clingy.
God likes clingy. Hashtag Faith Wetzel's message. Hashtag hit up Faith Wetzel. Anyway, why am I doing this? I guess I was doing phone. Anyway, so what was I saying about needy? Anyway, God's passionate about meeting our needs, not because he has a heart for us to like just want to use him, and just like, you guys know what I mean, almost like you use it for what you can get out of it, and then but you don't really have any kind of like personal connection with it. But he wants us to see that he's a father, he's a doctor, he's everything that we could ever need. He's a friend, and he loves to meet those needs through communion. That's what he said. So what is something else that you've experienced God to be passionate about?
Probably selfless love. So like, what is it called? Unconditional, there you go. Unconditional selfless love has been my experience, that his passion is to be one with you and to encounter you, but to love you in it. That's what he wants. He wants to find you, and you let him find you. You realize that he's always been there, he'll always be there, and then just pour his love into you unconditionally. You don't have to be something or achieve or anything like that, be of a certain name or stature or whatever. Kind of like the orphans and the widows, they were the lowest class. Women were stripped of their titles if their husband died, and often were remarried as property. So like, your husband has all this property, he dies, it's his brother's job to marry you, and he inherits your land. So I, for one, would hate that. But if there was no man to marry you, I don't want to marry your brother. But if there was no one to marry you and there was no one to care for you, like, you know, you being taken in by a family member, you were the lowest of the low. And often people, you know, women went to prostitution or whatever. Children were abused or were used as slaves or sold or, you know, taken from the streets and stuff like that. And that still happens actually in third world countries, especially like India. It's the same story for widows and orphans in India. And it's like, even in that, you know, outward and inward brokenness where you kind of know, oh, they probably are not having a good life, he loves them. But also in our first world, we have everything we could possibly want. Even in quarantine, we just order it and it shows up at our door. He also knows that we could be hurting and we could not be enjoying our lives, and that we're broken, and it doesn't matter. It's all the same to him. You're still his kid. He still wants to love you no matter what, even if, you know, you may struggle with headaches, but like, your friend has cerebral palsy and they're never gonna, you know, have experiences that you've had. It's like, he wants to love both of you, and he wants to heal both of you of what you have, and you experience him and him experience you in a way that only you two can have, because your relationship is special. And so it's like, the relationship has to come with love, and it has to come with unconditional pursuant love. That's what we kind of, in our relationship, we especially in the beginning, one of our main, I guess, mantras was love pursues connection. Love always pursues connection. So even if I'm angry, even if I'm hurt, even if I'm shy or afraid, in some way, if I'm choosing love over my comfort, if I'm choosing love over my mentality or over my feelings, actual love, in some way it's going to pursue a connection. It doesn't have to be like, you hurt me, but let's still be best friends. But it's like, hey, you hurt me, but I'm choosing to love you anyway. I'm choosing to forgive you and kind of
talk through it.
Yeah, talk through it. Let's talk about it. I'm not going to get mad at you and leave because I'm mad and you hurt me or you betrayed my trust.
Yeah.
But you did betray my trust, but I love you enough to come to you and talk to you about it. So definitely unconditional pursuing.
That's really good. And what's cool about Bliss, that y'all should know, is how amazingly she lives this out. Like, I can tell you, you know, there's been times where we've both been on the end, sadly, of, you know, deciding like, okay, I'm not going to pursue connection right now, however that looks. But we've also had this thing where it's like, both of us won't be down at the same time. And so what that looks like is, if for some reason I notice she's shying away because she's angry or hurt, or same thing with me, if I'm shying away, we're not pursuing connection, we're actually beginning to hide, is going after the other one. And Bliss lives that out. You live it out really well. So I think that's I think what's really cool is when we talk about what God is passionate about, oftentimes whenever we really know it, it's evident in our own lives too. So you're not only just saying it, people are like, oh, I know for a fact God's passionate about that because I know that you're passionate about it. Like, it's real. So that's really cool. Something else that I've found that God is passionate about is and I may have said it last week actually, is each moment. God is passionate about each moment. And yeah, and as a dad, I've realized like how important each moment is, and like how, as you know, I could have August or Finley playing here, and I just simply take out my phone, and I'm not necessarily sinning by looking at my phone, but it's like, you know, I realize, oh, why am I looking at this random picture of someone that's 200 miles away whenever I could be playing fire trucks with him, or I could even just be enjoying his presence. And not that you can't enjoy presence beyond your phone, but it's like just the mentality of like being present in that moment with what's going on in your home, in your general vicinity. And so it really hit me as like, how much more so is the Father? If I feel that way of like, I want to be that intentional about it, at least just being in the moment with my kids, how much more is He passionate about being in each moment with us? And I was talking to our friend, actually y'all may know him, Paul Cruz, today, and I told him, like, we were talking about how eternal God is, but yet He's personal. And it just hit me, it was like, the eternal aspect of God reveals how personal He is. And how personal He is reveals how eternal He is. You know, like He's literally involved in every single moment, inside and outside of time. He fills all space, and it's just like, wow. So anyway, that's something I've experienced, God to be passionate about. So if you were to sum up what you've, like taking everything you told us today, the three things, what you've experienced God's testimony to be, the two things you've experienced Him to be passionate about, how would you say that has affected your day-to-day in like the practical sense? Like, how do you feel like your life is beginning to look because of those things that you've mentioned? Like, what are some practical ways you feel like that plays out in your life?
Well, probably the first one, probably the most impacting testimony, part of Jesus' testimony I've experienced, well, that was hard to say, was just believing it. Like, once he started saying, hey, you're not abandoned, I love you. Hey, you're not an orphan, I love you. I'm always here, and I'll always be here, and you're worth more than that. And even if they say those things, that doesn't make them right. And it doesn't matter what they say. Don't care about what they think. I'm here, and this is what I say, and this is what I think. And since I'm the creator and ruler of it all, I'm the one that's right. So trust me. And so,
that's cool.
at the beginning, it was like he would say that. I'd be like, oh, that it's kind of like a compliment. Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. You know, and then later you're like, yeah, it's not. I don't really believe it, but it feels so good when you say it. You know, it went from that to, okay, actually, I guess I am worth something. You're really always there. I'm not alone, and I can rely on you. And even though this sucks right now, I'm not by myself in it. And you're giving me the answer to what it is. And now you're giving me the answer for the people that are hurting me. And now I'm developing a compassion for the people that are hurting me. And I'm sad for them more than I'm hurt by them. Because I started believing that what Jesus said about me, what Father God said about me, what Holy Spirit did inside of me was truth, no matter what I was feeling, no matter what I was experiencing on the outside, no matter the sin or the fallenness of the people around me and their issues that they're putting on me, no matter what it was, he had a truth and he had put it inside of me, and they weren't going to compromise that. And so whenever, I mean, it took some time, it took relationship and, you know, growing with him, but once that was really instilled, I could then be that to other people. So people will tell me sometimes, like, you're really good at communicating. I used to be awful at communicating. You can ask Taylor. I didn't know how. I would get upset and I couldn't talk, and I would get angry and I couldn't talk, and I couldn't even tell him when I lied. Like, we're like, you're amazing. Like, I love you, or whatever. No, I didn't do none of that. He would be like, compliment me, or like he would do something good, and I'd be like, hey, good job. But I wouldn't just be like, hey, I like the way you do things. Because it didn't happen. Because I didn't really get that either. So it was awkward and uncomfortable, and I felt weird. And it was, but as I believed it about myself, and as I figured out that clear communication and encouragement is like what everybody needs at all times, it was a lot easier to give that to him as I let Jesus give it to me. Instead of him being like, hey, you're amazing. And he'd be like, I know, but like, you have to think that, and kind of disregard it. Or when Taylor would be like, hey, you're awesome, I'd be like, why'd you say that? And I needed to know a reason so that I could keep performing that way, so that he would keep telling me that I was awesome. It was like, no, you're right. I am awesome, even if I don't feel like I'm awesome all the time. Or you're pretty, and it's like, ha 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 ha, you know, and then later it was like, okay, I am pretty, and that I'm uncomfortable saying that, so we're all work in progress. But so as I believed the truth about myself, it started coming out in the way that I viewed myself, I viewed others around me, and treated people around me, and it made it more evident, which I guess kind of goes along with what you're saying, as we, you know, it comes out, what he's passionate about comes out of us as we believe it, I guess.
That's good. No.
Does that answer the question?
It does.
Okay.
That was really good.
I forgot what the question was.
It's really good. It's awesome. I love everything you had to say today. I think it's hot. No, I think it was really good. I love you. So thank you guys for joining us tonight or today. And
Today.
Thank you for sharing your heart with us, Bliss, and your journey with us. I encourage you guys to ask Jesus these same questions and get to know him these ways and believe what he says. And also get in the Bible and read the testimonies of, read God's testimony throughout the Bible. You'll find that everything we said is evident in almost every person's life throughout the Bible. And it's really, really encouraging. So know that you're not alone. We're all in this together, and we love you, and we'll see you guys soon, okay? Hope you have a great night, day.
Bye.